morning, everybody. Welcome to the studio on what is a chilly Sunday morning as I get ready to edit this video. Today, you're going to get to see me painting this wonderful orange with this nice peel and a beautiful shadow coming off of it. So sit back, get ready, and I hope you enjoy the video. Thanks so much. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me in the studio this morning. It's chilly in the studio. I'm here with a nice hot cup of coffee and ready to do this voiceover for you all. Before I get into the supplies that I'm using, just let me get you started with the colors that I'm using. A little Hansa yellow, maybe a little bit of yellow ochre, and a little bit of new gamboge. I just want to get a little bit of color on here. I'm going to try to do this in a lot of layers, like 5 or 6 layers, maybe more than that, to really give some depth to this orange, some depth and dimension. So some very, very light layers. But before I get to that, let me talk about the supplies that I'm using. So the paper that I'm using is a sheet of Arches cold press paper. It's a weird shape. It's a little bit of a different size. It's about 7.5 inches wide by about 11 inches long, which is why it looks a little strange on the screen. It's because it is a little strange. It's just a leftover from another project I have done. And if it looks like the painting is progressing pretty quickly, that's because it is. I've sped it up a little bit to try and get through this a little bit. If we need to slow this down, or if I need to slow this down to talk about something specific later in the video, I'm going to go ahead and do that. But for now, while I'm just laying in some general color, I'm going to keep this sped up a little bit. The paints that I'm using, I already talked a little bit about the colors that I'm using. But the paints that I'm using are my studio set of M. Graham paints. I love my M. Graham paints. They're super nice, very rich. They re-wet very nicely. And I've got some very specific colors in my palette that I use. And if I touch on those, I'll talk about those. I'm mixing up a little bit of a darker mix here. As you can see, I'm just starting to put in some darker areas. I'm using a little bit of Pyrrole Red, a little tiny bit of Burnt Umber, and then some more of that Gamboge and Hansa Yellow. I want to start darkening up this orange as I start adding on layers. And so I'm just going to continue to do that with a few of these different colors. That Pyrrole Red is a nice fiery red, a really warm red. And if you mix that with some Gamboge or some Hansa Yellow, you can get these wonderful orangey colors. I do have an orange on my palette. It's Azo Orange. It is a super bright, super intense orange. And maybe I'll do a glaze at the end with some of that. But I like to use a mix of other colors to begin with. I think it gives the painting a little bit more depth and, really makes it a little bit more fun to paint with. So I'm just looking at my reference photo there and trying to see where there's some dark areas. I'm just starting to build up some of those areas, painting around everything else. Let's talk about the reference photo for just a second. If you like that reference photo, you can find it along with a lot of other reference photos over on a site called PMP-Art. It is a community for artists of all sorts to feel free to paint or shoot pictures if you're doing digital media, and post your artwork and get some good feedback from other artists who are probably doing the same things you're doing, trying to learn how to paint or how to shoot photography or whatever else, drawing. There's lots of things that go on PMP Art. Free to join. Not trying to plug them, but I've been a member there for a while. They're really nice over there. Each month they have a little challenge for artists that go on, and this is actually part of a challenge for October of 2023. The challenge is to paint food, and this is one of the paintings, or this is one of the pictures you could choose. Okay, so as I've been putting in a little bit of darker values on this painting, what I want to do is I want to set off the highlights a little bit, you know, the little pith of the orange. So I'm just going to drop in a little bit of stronger color to make the low lights in here, and hopefully that's going to make the highlights stand out. I think it's doing it. You can kind of see it's going on there. I don't think I've talked about the brushes that I'm using in this video. The brushes that I'm using are King Art brushes. These are the 90/20 series of brushes. I bought these on a whim about 3 years ago now, and I actually fell in love with these brushes. I think they're fantastic. They come to a wonderful point at the end. They hold quite a bit of paint, and the paint comes off very nice and smoothly out of the bristles. These happen to be synthetic brushes, and unlike other synthetic brushes that I have, the tips on these have not started to come into a hook, thus dulling the tip. These have been good for me for a long time, and I've painted with these every week, or almost every week, for the past few years, and still the tip is pretty good. Hasn't worn down much. So if you like pointed round brushes, consider giving them a chance. I'm just painting on the peel on this, obviously. That's going around the actual orange itself. Trying to define the outsides of this. We're going to go over this another time, I'm sure. You can see the bright orange of the peel right in the center of it. That's got a little bit of that azo orange on it. That azo orange is really pretty bright, and if you're using it in your normal painting, you've got to be careful with it because it can totally take over. Now you do see me turning the page quite a bit. I'm not a classically trained painter. I've kind of everything I've done, I've figured out on my own, and instead of twisting my hand around to get to a certain angle or a way to paint, I just find it a little easier to turn the page. That's a little distracting for you. I understand. I apologize for that, but I bet that any of you who are learning to paint on your own, you do a lot of this yourself. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just a different way to do it. And there you can see I've painted right around the center of this orange, that little bit of pith or whatever it is that pops out right in the center when you pull part of the orange off. You can just see that in the reference photo in the right hand side there. I think I'm going to be showing that a little bit more later. It's kind of an interesting feature of this this image, and I'm going to be highlighting that soon. All right, I've got some good color on the peel there as it's coming off of that orange. We've definitely got some more to do, but now I want to make sure I get some color on the orange itself. I want to give it some color and give it some roundness. And I also want to darken it up a little bit. It's looking a little too light as compared to the reference photo. I'm just going to fill in some color. Ooh, it looks like I just touched it with a little bit of that azo orange in there. If you see me pulling color from the very bottom of my paint palette, it's because my desk is at a slight angle and all my paint kind of drips down to one side. All right, there we go. We've got another layer of color on this orange. You can kind of see the whites of the orange there that I previously put on. I think we're going to end up putting quite a bit more of that on. And now we need to define this little center piece that I had just talked about. Got a little bit of gamboge, a little bit of yellow ochre in here. I don't want it to be exactly the same color. I want it to stand out a little bit, but I do want to give it some color. And then just a little bit of shadow underneath that. You see a bunch of lines on my painting that I haven't even come close to. Those are the shadow lines. I'm going to get to those in a little bit. But I'm going to put those on all by themselves, and just I'll do that right at the end, and it'll really help to make this painting pop right off the page. All right, going back into those same colors, I'm going to come back again, and let's put some of that low lights on the opposite side of this orange now. Or we could put this on. The more detail that's out there, the more this is going to look realistic. I'm not trying to copy, obviously, the orange as you see it there. Maybe there are some straighter lines. Maybe there are some little different areas on there. What I want to get is just a general idea of all of that on mine. I think in the end, when you look at it, you're not going to say, oh, it doesn't match exactly the reference photo. What you're going to say is, oh man, that looks like a real orange. You can tell the skin on it is still there. It hasn't been peeled off. I've got 2 kids. They just do not want to eat that white part of the orange. If they could pick that off of every slice, they totally would. I'm not sure it really comes off of every slice all the way, but boy, they try to get as much of that off of there as you can. All right, now you see there's a big gaping hole right in the center of this orange. I want to get a little bit, not a whole lot, but you can see I'm trying to get a little bit of shadowing around those bits of orange there, just as they're going to leak into that or turn into that. And that's going to be all totally darkened up. It's going to draw your eye right to that before we get done with this painting. And now there's a little texture on the inside surface of the peel over here. I'm just going to put that on a little bit. I'm just not trying to drop it in any specific way. I'm just dropping some color on there. Darken up the outside here a little bit. And that's a place I can use a little bit more of that azo orange that is so strong. Just make a nice line right around there like that and continue it as far as it needs to go. So you're starting to see some depth on this orange. And I'm going to fill in this inside. As soon as I do that, you're going to notice that there's even more depth to this. Looking a little bright. It's going to dry a little duller than that. It's going to tone it down a little bit when it dries, but it's starting to look like the reference photo. We're getting there with it. Not too much more to go. All right, we just see the edge of that peel over there. And this area, right in the center of the painting, really, we can be really bold with some of this orange coloring and really make that strong. A little azo orange, a little bit of that pyrrole red. It really helps that peel pop out of there. And the more you can build up that color, the more you can make that intense, the more this is going to look as though it's a real orange and it's really got some depth and dimension to it. Okay, I'm going to take a deep breath. I'm going to let this dry. And then I'm going to come back to it and add another layer. Some nice yellow ochre in here and a little bit of gamboge. I'm going to start adding some just texture on the inside of this peel. Doesn't need to be too much, just a little bit. I'm just letting the brush bounce along here and there. And on this side too. You see, I put in a little darker bit there because there's a bit of shadow just there, and I want to try to capture that a little bit. And we've got some texture on this part of the peel as well. All right. Let's take a breath and let's reload that brush and let's try this again. We're going to start to add even more dimension, right? A little bit of burnt umber. Oops, I thought I was moving. I thought I was moving back over to making the orange rounder, but apparently I'm going to make this center part stand out a little bit more. Just give it a little bit more, and by the time we're done, that's gonna stand out quite a bit. Just a little bit on the top there. All right. Azo orange, burnt umber, a little bit of gamboge. We've got our colors here. We can start to add even more color to the shadow side of this orange. Just building up a little bit of color here and building up a little bit of color there to try and give it some more dimension. Trying to find the areas anywhere between those orange slices that maybe needs just a little bit of color. Has just a little bit of dimension to it. I feel like I've said dimension like 100 times during this video already. I don't know that I've ever used that term so much at one point before, but it's true. I mean, there's a lot to do with that. On this orange in general, right? It's a simple shape, so we've got to do a lot to make it stand out. It's basically a ball, basically a circle, right, with a few little bumps here and there on it. And the peel is, yeah, there's a little bit of twisting and turning on that. Some of that's really going to pop out as soon as we start putting the shadow on, but it's basically a flat piece. Most of it's basically a flat piece of rind. So we've got to do everything we can to make this orange look as round as possible. And it's starting to get there, right? We've still got a little bit of work to do. I can put some dark, right, in between those orange slices, and it's going to give them a little bit more emphasis on them, a little more, again, dimension on those. I hate saying that same word over and over again, but that's the word we need to use. And I think as I do this a little bit more and a little bit more, I get away from looking exactly like the reference photo so much, but not so much that it's not recognizable as being from that. All right, a little bit of that Pyrrole red, a little bit of new gamboge, put just a little bit of blue in there to give a little bit more of a shadow area over here. I'm going to spread that out. There we go. All right, there's a bit of dark right there. Just as that peel flips a little bit, flips it like 90 degrees right on its side. All right, I let that dry. That's dry fully. And now we can finish this painting off. I think this is going to be my last segment for this one. I can use a little bit brighter color here, right? I can be a little bit bolder if I want to. Yeah, I'm being a little bit more bold. There's a lot of Pyrrole red in there. And I'm just trying to define a few of these segments, right? Like I said, part of the trick of this painting is making it look three-dimensional, making it look like it's more than just a flat ball there. And defining some of these slices is really going to help with that. And it can help define that on both sides, top and bottom. There it goes. Just a little line is all we need to help break up some of that and show the differences there. All right, and I think I'm going to need to do a little bit of shading or shadowing off of that orange onto the peel again, maybe on the orange itself, but definitely need a little bit more color right in that area where I'm painting. This has been an interesting painting for me to do. It's been like a test of using as few colors as possible to make something that looks good. Right, this whole thing I've really only used a couple of yellows and maybe a little bit of burnt umber and a little bit of Pyrrole red. Not much more than that, really. Right in here. Now I know I need to darken up right in here. Yep, that area is in a bit of shadow. So if I darken that up right next to the lip, that's going to make it look like it's curled. I guess there's a little bit of green tint to this. I'll drop a little bit of green on there. I don't think that's, in the end, I don't think that is seen all that much. And I don't think it's all that apparent from the reference photo as I'm looking at it, but it's there nonetheless. Trying to put in just a few lines on there. There are some lines on the reference photo. We'll just put that in and let that blend on down. And I think now I'm mixing up a little bit of blue, a little bit of neutral tint. That would be ultramarine blue, a little bit of neutral tint that I can use as a shadow color. I'm going to drop that on. I'm going to fill in a lot of the spaces here with this nice dark color. There we go. And as I come around this part of the orange, I want to make sure that I get some reflected light in there. So you see me dipping back into my orange color. I want to make sure that that orange is reflected in that shadow color. If I just make it all blue, and then it, you know, kind of, it's okay. It just doesn't have quite the life that it would have with that reflected color in it. And you can see that's a really orangey shadow color right there. All right, we'll get into some darker blues at the bottom of this. Blue, a little Payne's gray, a little neutral tint. And on this side, there's got to be a shadow over here as well. And you can see the shadow on this side doesn't have nearly the reflected color in it. It's much bluer. Well, I say that as I just dropped a little bit of orange right in there. Painting it right over. And this shadow is going to go right over that rind. It's going to touch, just touch like that. I don't want a fully flat edge on the outside of that. There we go. And that, very nice. That shadow goes right on over there. And it's going to continue right on down across this orange into some pockets here. Good. And underneath at the very bottom, just a thin line of shadow. Good, good, good. I now have to look and say, is there anything else I need to do with this to really make it stand apart? There's a little bit more shadowing that should go on here. Try to always do a little bit of self-reflection when I do a painting to see if there's anything I could have done better, anything I should have done differently. I think if I were to gauge myself on this one, I'd have segmented the orange a little bit better. But in general, I'm super happy with this. Thank you all for joining me in the studio as I painted this lovely orange with a peel. Hope you come back for the next video. Leave a comment down below and let me know how you liked it. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.